All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Park City Credit Union's second annual Northwoods Financial Summit. Thank you for taking the time to attend this virtual session. My name is Sarah Sturm, and I'm a member of the marketing team, and I'm excited to be a moderator for this session. Before our presenter, Mark, begins, we have a few housekeeping items to share. During the presentation, we will have all participants in a listen-only mode to reduce any feedback. We will have a Q&A at the end of the session, and at that point, you can unmute yourself to ask your questions. However, feel free to leave your questions in the chat at any point during the presentation, and we can address them when there is time. For those unfamiliar with WebEx, we have provided a key on the screen that references a few helpful features. You can mute and unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon. Clicking on the chat bubble will bring up the chat box where you can leave your questions and comments for our presenter. Clicking on the person icon will bring up the participant panel. There you can click on the raised hand icon to signal that you'd like to speak and unmute yourself. And as a reminder, this session is being recorded. We will send the link to all registered attendees next week when all sessions are completed. Included in that email, we will have a link to a survey for your feedback on the Financial Summit. And as a thank you for filling out the survey, you will be entered to win a prize. I will now introduce our speaker. Mark Schlegel has been in the car business for 21 years. He has worked in sales, finance, and service. He's the general manager at Heritage Chevrolet in Tomahawk. So thank you, Mark, for taking the time to be here today. I will now turn the session over to you, and you can get us started with your session. Oh, there we go.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction, and thanks for the opportunity to come back for a second year. So I had a lot of fun last year doing this, and glad to do it again. But boy, it's a really different. Thanks. It's a really different world we live in than it was a year ago, isn't it?
It sure
I can't
is.
believe the amount of change that we've seen. So yeah. So I do have some prepared comments to talk about this morning, or some topics to go over and some notes. So I'm going to go ahead and begin that process. And then, like you said, we'll take some questions at the end. So first, automobiles. One of the first things I want to say is that cars are not an investment. That's not 100% true if you're talking about 1967 big block Corvettes or collectible cars. Sometimes they're an investment. But the cars that we drive every day, that we rely on to get to and from work and to school and to shopping and all that, those are really an expense. They're not an investment. All the time, people come in the showroom and say, you know, I'm here to invest in a new automobile or those kinds of things. And I always caution people that really cars are not an investment. They are, however, a depreciating asset. And for most of us, they're the second biggest asset that we own in terms of value. So protecting that asset and taking care of it and getting the most out of it and trying to minimize the expense over the life of that vehicle, I believe, is really important. And some of that starts right up front. Some of it continues as we own a car through its life cycle. So I think it's wise to consider how to manage that investment. It's not an investment, how to manage that asset and the cost that goes along with it through the life of the vehicle. One thing that, you know, when we talked, Sarah, about doing this year was, I think one of the questions a lot of people have on their mind is now a good time to consider replacing your existing automobile and buy a new one or a pre-owned? And the answer to that question for many buyers is yes, it really is a good time. So why do I say that? There's a number of factors that kind of lead me to that conclusion. First, since COVID hit, we've seen that the value of used cars, whether they're one that you're purchasing or the one that you currently own, your trade-in, have gone up dramatically. From the time that COVID hit up until now, average values of used cars have gone up literally thousands of dollars. So if you have a vehicle to trade in and you're considering the purchase of a new one, the value of that vehicle probably is greater now than it was even a year ago. And so if you think that a new one's going to cost this and your trade-in is here, in many cases that gap has shrunk, which makes a new vehicle more affordable now than it was even just a few months ago. Secondly, I think this is actually a great thing to, for as a Park City member myself, and as, since we're doing this for Park City, interest rates remain very low. So what that means is if you're a payment buyer, and let's face it, most of us are concerned about that monthly payment. Not many of us just, go write a check for $50,000 to buy a new pickup truck. So that payment is really important, and low interest rates mean that those payments are typically lower than they have been. And, for the foreseeable future, it looks like interest rates are going to be manageable. But, those of you that are in the market and thinking about a new car, interest rates are definitely a factor that make it more affordable right now. One of the things that has affected car sales, both new and used, since COVID hit has been availability. Availability is an issue on new vehicles. It's certainly an issue on used vehicles as well. So we'll go into that a little deeper. So on new vehicles, since COVID hit, we've seen that sales slipped to the lowest level, get this, in 50 years back in April. The way that auto industry sales are reported is on an annualized rate, and in the month of April, they slipped to the lowest level in 50 years. Since then, auto sales on the new side especially have rebounded, and we're kind of back to more of a normal situation. Because of COVID, all the automobile manufacturing facilities in the United States shut down for a period of 10 to 12 weeks where there were no vehicles being built. In many states like Wisconsin, sales continued. In some states, sales stopped. But as a result of that production ceasing, the inventory really tightened up from where it was. Many dealers were already low on inventory when COVID began back in March because things had been fairly robust. And so inventories went very low. They are now recovering, but it's taken longer than expected. When I talk to General Motors, we're a Chevrolet dealer, so when we talk to GM, one of the key points is they're going to build more cars in the fourth quarter than they expect to sell, so that should help the situation, but inventory probably still is going to remain a little tight. So when you think about new versus used vehicles, there's lots of considerations to decide and think about when you make that decision as to which way you want to go. So new vehicles generally are a little more expensive up front. They're brand new, so they haven't been used before. They come with a factory warranty, and that warranty is going to differ depending on the manufacturer that you're talking about or the vehicle that you're interested in. Generally speaking, because it's new and it hasn't been used before, had any miles, you have lower maintenance costs up front in the early years of ownership. But as time goes by, and as you've made payments and paid down that vehicle and eventually don't have a loan anymore, you can expect that maintenance costs are going to go up as it ages. New vehicles offer the latest in technology and safety features. We're seeing just a plethora of new features designed to help keep you safe, like lane departure warning, lane keep assist, automatic front braking, automatic pedestrian braking, all the cameras and the various camera views, rear cross traffic alerts. There's all sorts of new technologies that have appeared in the last 5 or 6 years that have really made it easier to drive a car and probably safer to drive a car and to make it easier for you to control that vehicle. And so we see a lot of buyers really interested in those new safety features. If you're talking about an older vehicle, they don't have them. Also, when you're thinking about new, how you pay for that vehicle, how you choose to make that yours, you've got a number of options. Certainly we have cash buyers that come in and just pay for the vehicle. Some folks will take money out of their savings to pay it down. Some people cash in investments to buy it. Many of us finance a vehicle. And then when you talk about financing, you got lots of financing options. There's traditional loans, there's balloon loans like the Park City Payment Saver program, and then there's leasing. And leasing is a good option for a lot of different buyers in that it gives you a lower monthly payment, allows your money to go a little further, maybe get into a little more vehicle for a lower payment. And then you've got some interesting arrangements like a one-pay lease. What a one-pay lease is if you're a cash buyer and you like a new vehicle every 3 or 4 years, if you do a one-pay lease, you can actually pay for all your lease payments up front, and you then don't make a payment for 3 or 4 years depending on the term of the loan, and at the end you turn the vehicle in. So a lot of customers are interested in one-pay lease options. No matter where you choose to purchase a vehicle, it's wise to ask about the options that you have after you've made the decision to buy and when you're talking with the dealership's business manager to make the decision that's really going to be best for you. In addition to just purchasing the vehicle, there are lots of other options that you have when you're making a vehicle purchase, whether it's new or used. Those things include things like an extended service agreement. Extended service agreements are a great way to help manage the expense of a vehicle over time because it protects you from unanticipated repairs. And, we talked just a few minutes ago about all these new safety features that are on a vehicle today. They're all electronic. They're all new technologies. The cost of repairing some of those things can be rather extensive. So an extended service agreement does help you protect yourself from unanticipated costs. Things like engine and transmission replacement, the cost of those items has gone up dramatically as well. So it doesn't really matter if it's a new or a pre-owned vehicle when you're considering purchasing from a dealer. Ask about things like extended service agreements. There are other things that we offer and many other dealers offer as well to help protect your purchase and to manage that expense. Things like gap insurance in case the vehicle is totaled and you owe more than it's worth. Credit life in case you're disabled or if something happens to the buyer, you've got credit life and disability. There's a number of different things that any reputable dealership is going to go over with you when you decide to make choices. Also on the new side, a lot of talk right now about electric vehicles. That's something that it seems like all the manufacturers are jumping into. Tesla's been very successful with electric vehicles. They've tended to market towards higher end buyers. And for most people, the cost of an electric vehicle has been out of reach. The next 5 to 10 years, that's really going to change. All the major manufacturers are jumping into electric, spending a lot of money on development, and we're going to see that the cost of those vehicles and their capabilities come down. But there's going to be a lot of issues that go along with that. For example, infrastructure. Where do you go to charge it? If you're traveling, more than the range of the vehicle away on a long trip, are you going to be able to pull over somewhere and plug in and charge in a relatively reasonable amount of time? So there's lots of infrastructure issues that are going to come up and probably unforeseen things, but clearly the move to electric and to alternative fuel is something we're going to see in the next few years. Used vehicles. Not everybody's a new car buyer. For many folks, a pre-owned vehicle is a great choice. And then, when you talk about used vehicles, then you got lots of different things to consider. As I mentioned earlier, the value of used vehicles has gone up pretty dramatically in the last several months. Availability has also been really tight. One of the reasons for that is as new car vehicle inventory has shrunk, dealers have been trying to supplement their inventory with used, and it's been really tough to get. That's what's really driven the pricing of used up. And that's probably going to stay that way for a while based on all the industry information that I've seen recently. If you're thinking about a pre-owned vehicle, you got some considerations to make. First is, do I want to buy from a dealer, or am I more interested in buying from a private party? Both are good alternatives. It kind of depends on which particular vehicle you're looking for, what your price range is, how old of a one do you want, all those kind of things. Remember that in the state of Wisconsin, if you buy from a licensed dealer, you are protected. That's not true in most states, believe it or not. Wisconsin is one of the few states that requires dealers to inspect pre-owned vehicles before they're offered for sale. So there's actually a state-required disclosure that has to be completed, and a qualified technician goes through that vehicle and discloses the condition of that vehicle to you prior to you making that purchase. In addition, if you are purchasing from a licensed dealer in Wisconsin, there are remedies if something goes wrong, and things do go wrong, unfortunately. If you buy from a private party, you're more on your own. So it's a consideration as you consider that purchase. Online buying. One of the things that has really dramatically changed as a result of COVID is how people approach buying a car. For the last several years, we've seen the interest over the internet and third-party buying sites become more and more popular. That's even become more popular, and really people are using the internet more and more now when they're searching for a vehicle. So whether you're doing research on a manufacturer's website, a third-party site, viewing dealer websites, customers are using internet sites more and more before they come into a dealership to purchase a vehicle. And that really has actually made the buying process easier for customers. It's actually made our job as a dealer easier as well, because customers have done research and they have a much better idea of what they're looking for and what to expect in terms of equipment, pricing, availability, before they ever come into the showroom. And one of the things that we've seen now too is that more and more dealer websites are offering you the ability to actually complete that purchase of a vehicle online and minimize face-to-face contact. Clearly, that's something that's important and at the top of mind for a lot of people during COVID times. So we offer that as well on our website. It's called Shop Quick Drive through General Motors. Many of the other manufacturers are offering similar things. So if that's something that you're interested in, now's a great time. Most dealers will help you complete as much of the process as you can online and then actually deliver the vehicle to you so you can minimize face-to-face contact. So we talked at the beginning about how cars are an expense. One of the other things that is important to talk about when you're thinking about automobiles is service and repair. As the vehicle ages, of course, it needs more repair. All vehicles need routine maintenance during their life cycle. So it's really important to think about how you're going to maintain that vehicle and actually then go about doing it. Today's vehicles require less maintenance than they used to because most vehicles now use synthetic oil. So oil change intervals have been extended. Most are good for 6,000 to 7,500 miles between changes. But the cost of the services is a little more than it used to be because synthetic oils are a little more expensive. Maintaining a vehicle from the time of purchase through your ownership really does help you minimize some of those unexpected expenses when things break down. So from oil changes to tire rotations to an alignment on an annual basis, those are all important things to think about. Other important preventative maintenance things to think about over the life of the vehicle are things like fluid exchanges, transmission services, coolant flushes. We live in a severe climate here. We go from 100 degrees in the summer to 40 or 50 below in the winter. Snow and ice is tough on vehicles. Those temperature swings are tough on things. So it's important, no matter where you choose to have your vehicle serviced, to make sure that you're paying attention to the recommendations that a service shop is giving you in terms of when's it time to service the transmission, how long is the coolant really good for. All of those kinds of things are important. And a lot of times we don't think about them, but it's important to develop a relationship with a reputable service facility so that you're getting that kind of advice. So what we talked about this morning in the first part was how car buying has changed during the area of COVID, new versus used, some of the service and maintenance things that go along with the ownership of a vehicle. And I guess I would say at this point, let's open it up to some questions. What kind of questions might we have about the whole vehicle buying and ownership experience?
Yeah, so since we are at the question and answer portion of the session, we do ask that if anyone has a question, again, please utilize the raise hand feature in the participants panel and go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll address them in the order we see, or just feel free to send us a chat and we'll address them as they come in. If we are unable to address all the questions during the session, we will personally reach out to you with an answer. So I will just start off with some of the questions that we had sent in prior, and if I see any come through then, I will make sure to grab those as well if we have time. So the first question I do have is, you kind of touched on the maintenance or just keeping your car good to go for the long haul kind of thing. So one of the questions was, what is rust protection and why is that beneficial? And when should we look into getting it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sarah. One of the things that we really see in our service facility is how nasty the underside of a vehicle gets over time. Certainly living in the Rust Belt here in Wisconsin, corrosion and rust has always been an issue for us, but since the widespread use of brine came into effect not too many years ago, we've seen that rust has become a much bigger issue. Brine is really corrosive. It has salt in it, sodium chloride. It also has magnesium chloride in it, and both of those things are highly corrosive to a vehicle. So one of the ways that we can combat that and help extend the life of your vehicle is to offer rust protection and undercoating either when the vehicle is new or when it's only a few years old. It's something that we actually didn't do at Heritage Chevrolet until the last few years, but we've seen such a problem that we've begun offering that. And it's not only just the rust on the outside, the body panels, but it's what happens underneath the vehicle from the application of these chemicals. It attacks brake lines. It attacks all the metal components underneath your vehicle. And believe it or not, at the end of the winter, when you get it, run it through the car wash and have that underbody flush and you think you're good to go, you're not. It actually takes a brush to break the bond of those chemicals with your vehicle. Otherwise, as you drive all summer long, it is continuing to corrode. So we do offer that now, and many dealerships do as well. I know we talked a little bit before the session began about this topic. Many of the rust protection products that are available today will offer a warranty. If you buy the vehicle new, the warranty is generally 9 or 10 years with a mileage limit. If you buy it used, a lot of cases it's 5 years. So if rust protection is something that you're interested in, ask the dealer where you're purchasing the vehicle, what they have available, what the cost of that is, and ask about the warranty information as well, because it's going to differ from dealer to dealer. But generally speaking, I would say in Wisconsin, one of the best ways to maximize the longevity of that vehicle is to consider rust protection at time of purchase.
Okay, that's good to know. I know you just briefly mentioned gap insurance. Why is gap insurance beneficial, and when should someone look at getting that?
Absolutely. So gap insurance is a product that's offered at most dealerships to protect something that can happen to you. Let's say you go out and buy a new vehicle. I mentioned several times in the presentation it's a depreciating asset. So it's right here the day you buy it. You drive it off the lot. It starts to do this almost immediately. If you financed 100% of the purchase price of that vehicle plus tax, title, and license, maybe you even carried over part of your the last loan that you had on the vehicle because your trade-in value was less than you owed, you could be in a situation where you're financing over 100% of the purchase price of that vehicle. If something were to happen, especially in the early years of ownership where you totaled that vehicle out, chances are you're going to owe more than that vehicle is worth. And if you don't have gap insurance, you become responsible for that deficiency when your insurance company settles with you and pays off the loan. Gap insurance protects you from that situation. So just to put real numbers on it, let's say you bought a new Silverado pickup, you financed $45,000. A year into it, you totaled the vehicle, you owe $40,000 and your insurance company pays you $35,000. If you don't have gap insurance, you're responsible for that $5,000 of what we call upside downness. If you have gap insurance, it gets paid. So when to consider gap insurance? Consider gap insurance if you're financing the vehicle. Consider gap insurance especially if you don't have a down payment, you don't have a significant trade equity moving into the vehicle, and you're financing a high percentage of that purchase.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so we had a question come in. I'll take that right away, so don't forget. You talked about the greater availability of electric cars in the future. Where are we at with self-driving cars?
That's a great question. So there was a lot of talk a few years ago about self-driving cars. Google had a test going. A number of the technology companies were involved with automobile manufacturers to help develop self-driving technologies. It's probably still coming. They really discovered, though, that there's a lot of problems with that. There were some places out west, especially in California and some other states, where they ran some rather large trials to see how things worked, and they discovered that the technology was still a bit glitchy. Things were happening that they weren't expecting, and they actually found that the accident rates of self-driving cars in many cases were higher than the accident rates of human-driven cars. Now, of course, the whole purpose was exactly the opposite. So the technology is improving. We're probably going to get back to that point, but we're not there yet. On a sidebar, though, many of the safety features that are available on new cars today that I talked about earlier actually help you with some of the self-driving things, if you want to put it that way. Great example is lane keep assist. So lane keep assist is a new technology we've had for the last several years, where it has two cameras in the vehicle. One watches the right-hand side of the road, one watches the left-hand side of the road or the center line. And if you deviate from that lane, it gives you a warning. The car beeps, flashes a light, lets you know. And with lane keep assist, it actually moves the steering wheel ever so slightly to help keep you in the lane. These technologies are available today, and they really do make a difference. Unfortunately, it does rely on the camera being able to see the sides of the road and see the lanes. In the wintertime, if you got a snow-covered road, it's not going to work or not going to work as well. So like every technology, maybe it's not 100% perfect, but it does certainly help. So I guess that was the long answer, and the short answer is they're still working on it. It's coming. Stay tuned.
Sounds good. What if I don't see a car on the lot that I like, but I saw one online at another dealership, but I want to work with your dealership? Can we still look at that car?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. Dealers face that very situation all the time, because even in normal times, you can't have every combination of make, model, color, options, trim on your lot at any moment in time. So there's a couple of ways to address that. First, if you have a dealer that you want to work with and they don't have what you're looking for, contact the dealer and let them know what it is that you're looking for. If there's a vehicle like that available at another dealer, in many cases they can trade and get that vehicle there for you to purchase at the dealer of choice. One of the things we're seeing right now is limited inventory is causing people to come in and ask those questions. And in many cases, the dealer may have a vehicle that is coming in from the factory that is what you're looking for, and many dealers will put your name on that car so that when it arrives, they can let you know and you can come in and make that work as well. So really the important part here is choose who you'd like to work with as a dealer and let them know what it is you're looking for, and most dealers will work with you to get the vehicle that you're looking for.
Okay, thank you. So at what point is it worth buying a new car versus putting more money into it? And as the consumer, are we expected to know this, or do the honest service centers actually help you figure this out and let you know that, hey, maybe you're putting more money than your car is worth into this, let's look at getting you a new one?
Great question. And this is one that we run into a lot. Obviously, as a vehicle ages, it becomes worth less. As you put miles on, obviously it's going to need more maintenance and repair. So there does come a point where it probably is wise to replace that vehicle versus investing, or I said the investing word again, spending more money to keep it on the road. The important thing here is to work with a repair facility that you have confidence in the advice that they're giving you. Any good repair facility, if you are, got a 20-year-old vehicle and it needs an engine, is going to say, hey, before you spend $5,000 on putting a remanufactured engine in this vehicle, you might want to think that now's the time to replace that vehicle. So really that relationship you have with your repair facility, whether it's in a dealership or not in a dealership, is really important. And if you're in that situation and you don't think that you're getting the answer that you're looking for, you have those concerns, it's probably best to raise that question and say, hey, is my car really worth putting $5,000 in to replace the engine or $3,500 to replace the transmission? And if you're not comfortable with the answer that you're getting, seek a second opinion. There's also great online tools that can help you through this process. So, for example, if you find yourself in that situation, go to Kelley Blue Book online, kbb.com, look up the value of your vehicle. And if you've got a car and it says that your current car is worth $3,000 and you're looking at a $5,000 bill to replace the engine, it probably doesn't make sense to go ahead with that. Unless you're emotionally attached to that vehicle, it has sentimental value, you really, really like it, and you plan on keeping it for a long time, it's really wise to get some counsel before making that decision.
Great. That's great to know, because I know, I am not a car expert. So when I go in to get my car fixed, I want to know that I'm not just being conned into, that we need to get this fixed or that you're saying that I just need to go buy a car and maybe I really don't need to. So those are great options to have. Good to know.
Well, and really there's one more thing I probably should have said. So let's say you're in that position where you've got a vehicle that you looked up the value of it on Kelly. It says it's worth about $3,000 private party. You got a $5,000 bill to replace the engine. All right, that's pretty simple. We know it probably doesn't make sense. What if you got a $3,000 car and it needs a transmission done and the cost of that repair is $3,200? And you're thinking, well, all right, well, it's worth roughly what it's going to cost to repair it. If I repair that transmission, I'm going to be able to get another 5 years out of it. All right, maybe this makes sense. Okay, what if you replace that transmission and you get down the road a month and the radiator fails? Or what if you get down the road 6 months and now you're doing brakes, or it needs ball joints in the suspension, or God forbid you put the transmission in and 3 weeks later the engine blows. So you really have to keep those things in mind. And not only just what is it going to cost today, but what are some of the things I'm going to expect in the near future that I also might need. So if you find yourself in that situation, again, ask the repair facility, okay, maybe biting off this transmission isn't so bad, but what else am I going to maybe be looking at in the next year? And any good repair facility will do a multi-point maintenance inspection for you on your vehicle and will give you the health of what they're seeing. Now, does that mean it's a guarantee that things aren't going to crop up? No, but you're going to at least get a report card on your vehicle's current health to help you make that decision.
That's great to know. Thank you. All right, so say we need a new car. Should I get pre-approved?
Financing pre-approved, I assume?
Yep, sorry.
Absolutely.
And then how much do I need for that down payment maybe too? Do you want to combine those together?
Perfect. Let's throw them together. So many dealerships, including ours, offer a finance office. We work with Park City Credit Union. You're one of our preferred lenders, and a lot of our customers finance at Park City through Heritage Chevrolet. Almost all the dealerships are going to offer that service as well. Getting pre-approved is not a bad plan. It's especially a good idea if you have some concerns about your credit history. We all recognize that bad things happen to good people. Life doesn't always work out the way that you expect, and if you know your credit score isn't the best, talking to a lender or talking to a dealership before you make that purchase decision is probably wise. Number one, it'll help you get a better idea of what to really expect. What kind of rate am I going to be able to get? What kind of financing is going to be available to me based on the situation that I'm in? And it helps you also determine what kind of monthly payment is going to be affordable in your budget and what to expect in terms of what that car is going to cost. So that's probably wise. Down payment was the second part of that question. When a lender looks at an application that's coming from you through a dealership, or even if you're just going at that lending institution, one of the key things that they're looking at is loan to value. What is loan to value? So if the car is worth $20,000 and you're going to finance $10,000, you're financing 50% loan to value. A lender is going to look at that really favorably because their risk is less, therefore what you're going to pay in an interest rate is less. So whatever money you can put down is going to help that interest rate that you get. Now, if you got a great credit rating, an A or an A+, then it's not going to really make such a difference. So a lot of folks with very strong credit ratings finance all of the purchase price of the vehicle and don't put any money down. Obviously, any money down that you put down is going to reduce that monthly payment. So there's also budgetary considerations. So one of the things that we see happen a lot is a customer will come in, pick out the vehicle they want. As we go through the process, they're going to tell us, we want a $300 a month payment. So that can be adjusted in a number of ways. It can be adjusted in terms of how long you choose to finance that vehicle, whether it's 48, 60, 72, even 84 months, whether you choose to purchase or lease, whether there's a trade-in that is helping reduce that, or how much money down. So a lot of times a customer will come in and say, okay, how much is the payment going to be? With no money down, you run it, it's $360 a month, and then they say, okay, what's it going to take me down to get to $300? Any dealership's going to be able to help you do that and help you put together a program that's going to make that car affordable.
Awesome. Thank you. And I believe this is the last question, unless I have any more come through. When do I need to talk to the insurance provider about coverage for my vehicle? I know that's always like, you know, a worry of mine when I purchased it. Well, I've only really purchased one vehicle, but, you know, do you purchase it before you go in, which you really don't know what you're getting? You know, when is that, you know, an important step?
Absolutely. So that question is actually multifaceted. First, if you're a younger buyer, obviously car insurance is more expensive for you. If your driving record is less than stellar, car insurance is more of a factor for you. The vehicle that you choose to purchase obviously is going to have an impact on what your premium is. So if you're purchasing something that is a little more risky, the way the insurance company looks at it, like a Corvette or a Camaro or something like that, it's important to talk to an insurance agent ahead of time so that you have an expectation of what your monthly premium is going to be based on your individual situation. As we age, as we get older, if you got stable driving record and good history, that monthly premium or that annual premium is probably less of a factor. Obviously, if you're buying a new car, you can expect that your insurance is going to go up. The last time I bought a new one, I was surprised my insurance went up like $10 every 6 months. You kind of go, okay, well, that's not a big deal. But depending on what you buy, it could be a bigger deal. Wisconsin does have a mandatory auto insurance law now. That's something relatively new in the last few years. The dealership, especially if they're financing that vehicle for you, is not going to let you leave the dealership without talking to your insurance agent and making sure that coverage is bound. So if you're financing at the dealership through a lender, one of the things that the finance and insurance manager at that dealership is going to do is contact your insurance coverage or your insurance carrier, your local agent, make sure that insurance coverage is bound, and they're going to have you sign a form so that you understand that you know you need to have insurance before you can leave. If you are a cash buyer, most dealerships aren't going to do that because there isn't any need from the lender agreement to cause that. But by the same token, you still do need to contact your agent and make sure that you're bound. Most coverages or most carriers will give you 30 days to contact them, but it's really better to make sure that you're bound and covered before you leave the lot. Or if you buy one private party, call your agent as soon as possible to make sure that you're covered. We all know that things happen when we're not prepared. It sure seems to work that way. So it's best to protect yourself and make sure that that coverage is taken care of before you start driving.
Great, great. Well, I think that's all the questions we have. Did you have anything that you wanted to share quick before I wrap this up here?
Just thank you. Thank you for the opportunity again for a second year. I've enjoyed our time together this morning. If you have any questions from anything you've heard, feel free to contact me at Heritage Chevrolet. My phone number there and my email address is on the screen. And of course, certainly we're not the dealer that everyone's going to choose. It's really important to find someone in the car business, a dealer that you're comfortable with, and develop a relationship with them so that over time they're there to help you with whatever vehicle needs you may have, whether it be a purchase or lease of a new one, a quality pre-owned vehicle, or service. That relationship that you build with a provider is really important over time.
Wonderful. Well, again, we thank you so much, Mark, for taking the time to be here with us today and sharing your knowledge with everyone. I know I learned a lot, so I hope everyone else did as well. But on behalf of the planning team and the presenters, I want to thank you for being part of the second annual Northwoods Financial Summit. As a reminder, we will send out the recordings of the sessions next week, as well as survey for feedback. If you've gained some new information today, feel free to register for any of the upcoming sessions that may be occurring this week. We will leave the registration page open for anyone who still wishes to attend a live session this week. And again, thank you all for attending and have a great day.